The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor 3 seconds before Vera Konstantin realized she'd just signed her life away. "Congratulations," the devil said, extending his hand across the mahogany desk. "You're now officially mine." Dmitri Volkov's smile didn't reach his eyes, those chips of Arctic ice that had evaluated her like livestock for the past hour. Vera's fingers trembled as she stared at the contract, her signature still wet, binding her to 6 months of, what had his lawyer called it, companionship services. What a sterile term for selling yourself to a monster. "I didn't agree to," she started. "You agreed to settle your brother's debt." Dmitri stood, buttoning his charcoal suit jacket with movements so precise they seemed choreographed. $2 million. Did you think I wanted book club discussions? Vera's nails bit into her palms. She wanted to rake them across his smug face, that sharp jawline, those full lips that probably knew 1,000 ways to lie. "You said you'd give me time to gather the money." "I did. 48 hours. He checked his watch, a Patek Philippe that cost more than her nursing degree. "That deadline passed 17 minutes ago. Now we proceed to alternative arrangements." The fury in her chest burned hotter than shame. Alexei, her idiot baby brother, had gambled away money he didn't have in one of Dmitri's underground casinos. When the enforcers came, they'd made it clear, payment in cash or collateral. They'd looked at Vera like she was already naked. "I need to think about this." She stood abruptly, chair scraping. Dmitri moved faster than she'd anticipated, blocking the door with his considerable frame. He was 6'3" to her 5'6", and standing this close, she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that probably cost more than her rent. "The thinking portion of our relationship has concluded," he said softly. Too softly. "You signed. Your apartment has been cleared. Your belongings are being moved to my penthouse as we speak." "You can't." "I already did." His hand caught her wrist, not painfully, but with enough pressure to remind her who held power here. "Your phone's been replaced. New number. Your job at St. Mary's has been informed you're taking an extended leave for family matters. Your student loans? Paid. Your mother's medical bills? Settled. Your brother's kneecaps? Still intact, which honestly surprises me. I despise loose ends." Each word was a nail in her coffin. Vera's breath came shorter, rage and panic warring in her throat. "Why me?" she whispered. "You could have anyone." Something flickered in those cold eyes. Interest, maybe. Or hunger. "Because you walked into my casino wearing that ridiculous second-hand dress, trying to look brave while your hands shook. Because you offered yourself up like a martyr, all noble suffering and doe eyes. Because..." His thumb traced her racing pulse. "I enjoy breaking beautiful things that think they're strong." She jerked away, and he let her amused. "I won't sleep with you." "You will." Not a threat, a prediction. "But not tonight. Tonight, you'll move into your new quarters. Tomorrow, we'll establish rules. And the day after..." His smile turned sharp. "We'll see how long your defiance lasts. I hate you." "Good." He opened the door with a flourish. "Hate keeps things interesting. Love would be dreadfully boring." The driver was waiting, a silent boulder named Pavel who'd probably buried bodies in his spare time. Vera climbed into the Mercedes with as much dignity as she could manufacture, refusing to look back at Dmitri's office windows. The penthouse was exactly what she'd expected. Sterile luxury, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. Her quarters turned out to be a bedroom suite larger than her entire apartment, complete with a walk-in closet already filled with clothes she hadn't chosen. She rifled through them, designer labels, silk and cashmere, dresses cut to seduce. Everything in shades that would complement her pale skin and dark hair. He'd planned this. Probably for weeks. The rage crystallized into something colder, sharper. If Dmitri Volkov wanted to play games, she'd learn the rules and find the loopholes. She'd survive 6 months, collect her brother, and disappear. Men like him got bored easily. She just needed to be boring enough to outlast his interest. The bathroom mirror reflected a stranger. Same brown eyes, same full mouth, but something haunted in her expression now. Something that understood exactly what she'd become. A knock interrupted her spiral. Not Dmitri, a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen everything twice. "I'm Irina," she said in heavily accented English. "I manage the house. You need anything, you ask me." "Not him." "What's he like?" The question escaped before Vera could stop it. Irina's expression softened microscopically. "Dangerous. But fair in his way. Follow the rules, you'll be fine. And if I don't, then God help you, because no one else will." The rules arrived at breakfast, printed on cream cardstock and elegant script, as if tyranny looked better in calligraphy. Vera read them while pushing scrambled eggs around her plate, each dictate more infuriating than the last. 1. You will be available when summoned. 2. You will attend all designated social functions. 3. You will maintain appropriate appearance standards. 4. You will not contact family or friends without permission. 5. You will occupy the guest suite unless invited elsewhere. 6. You will not leave the penthouse unaccompanied. 7. You will refer to me as Sir in professional settings. 8. Violation of any rule results in penalty, to be determined at my discretion. "You forgot number 9, she said when Dmitri entered the dining room. "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." He poured coffee with infuriating calm.
Dante.
"How literary. I wouldn't have pegged you as the classics type. I minored in English before switching to nursing. Seemed more practical to save lives than analyze dead poets. Yet here you are, doing neither." He sat across from her, and God help her, he was devastating in morning light. Dark hair still damp from the shower, white shirt open at the collar, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms that suggested he didn't just sit behind desks counting money. She hated that she noticed. These rules are insane. She flicked the cardstock. "I'm not a prisoner."
No.
"Prisoners don't get paid." He slid an envelope across the table. "Your first week's stipend. $5,000. You'll receive it every Monday." Vera stared at the money like it might bite. Blood money. Whore's wages. Her mother's medication for another month. She took it. Smart girl. Dmitri's approval felt like acid. "We have a charity gala tonight. Something for pediatric cancer research. Wear the blue dress in your closet, the one with the..." I know which one. She'd seen it. Backless, indecent, designed to advertise ownership. "What's my role at this circus?" "You're my companion." Smile. Look adoring. Laugh at important men's jokes. Standard arm candy protocol. "And if someone touches me?" His coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. "Define touches. You know exactly what I mean." The temperature dropped 10 degrees. "Anyone who puts hands on what's mine will lose the privilege of having hands." He said it conversationally, like discussing weather. "But that won't happen. One look at you standing next to me, wearing my claim like a fucking billboard, and they'll know better. I'm not a possession. Until November 15th, you absolutely are." He stood, checking his watch again. Always watching time, as if he were racing it. "I have meetings until 7. Irina will help you prepare. And Vera?" He paused at the door. "Don't test me. Not yet. You're not ready for what happens when I push back." He was gone before she could formulate a response sharp enough to draw blood. The day crawled past. Irina brought lunch, borscht and black bread that reminded Vera painfully of her grandmother. She tried the new phone, found it locked except for approved contacts. Dmitri, Irina, Pavel, and a doctor someone or other she didn't recognize.
No Alexei. No Mom.
No her best friend Simone, who'd probably already called the police. "Can I at least call my mother?" she asked Irina. "She'll worry." The older woman's expression turned pitying. He already called her. Said you're traveling for work, 6-month contract, limited communication. Sent her $5,000 as a signing bonus. He thought of everything. He always does. Mr. Volkov doesn't leave loose ends. At 6, Irina returned with a beautician and stylist who descended like a grooming army. They waxed, polished, painted, and primped until Vera barely recognized herself. The blue dress fit like it had been designed on her body, which it probably had. Dmitri struck her as the type to have her measurements memorized. Shoes, the stylist said, producing stilettos that looked like weapons. And jewelry. The jewelry was a diamond necklace that probably cost more than a house. Vera touched it hesitantly, imagining the weight of its value against her throat. A collar, she muttered. A statement. Irina corrected. You're with Dmitri Volkov. People need to know what that means. At 7:15, Pavel drove them to the gala at one of those historic hotels that charged $500 for mediocre champagne. Dmitri helped her from the car with old-world courtesy that would have been charming if it wasn't all performance. Remember, he murmured, hand possessive on her lower back. You're mine tonight. Smile like you enjoy it. I'd rather smile at a root canal. See, there's that fire. His breath warmed her ear. Save some for later. I enjoy watching you burn. The ballroom was exactly what she'd expected. Crystal chandeliers, designer gowns, men with more money than morality. Dmitri worked the room like a maestro, and she hated how good he was at it. Charm deployed with surgical precision, threats hidden behind white smiles. Dmitri. A barrel-chested man approached with a blonde 20 years his junior clinging to his arm. Good to see you. And who's this lovely creature?
Vera Konstantin.
Dmitri's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on her waist. My companion. The way he said companion left no room for misinterpretation. The barrel-chested man's eyes traveled over her with the subtlety of a brick, and Vera felt her smile calcify. Konstantin. The blonde perked up. Any relation to Alexei Konstantin? He owes my brother money. Vera's blood turned to ice. That matter's been settled, Dmitri said smoothly. Vera's brother made some poor choices. We're helping him course correct. The way he phrased it made her sound complicit, like she'd volunteered for this nightmare. Vera's nails bit into her champagne flute hard enough to hurt. 3 hours of this. 3 hours of smiling while men appraised her, of standing silent while Dmitri negotiated deals that probably involved suffering, of pretending the diamonds at her throat weren't a lease. By 10, she was ready to commit violence. You're doing well, Dmitri murmured during a rare private moment. Better than I expected. Go to hell. Already there, darling. I'm just taking you with me. The penthouse felt like a cage by the 4th day, even a gilded one with 1,000 thread count sheets and a view that tourists would kill for. Vera spent mornings pacing her suite like a trapped animal, afternoons glaring at Irina's pitying glances, and evenings being paraded at whatever function Dmitri deemed necessary. Tonight's entertainment, a private poker game in the penthouse's game room. You don't have to do anything, Dmitri had told her while adjusting his cufflinks. White gold, understated, expensive. Just sit, look beautiful, and make my competitors nervous.
Psychological warfare via cleavage.
How dignified, says the woman wearing a dress that costs more than most people's cars. She'd wanted to argue, but he had a point. The red silk number hugging her curves was obscene in its elegance, cut to distract and conquer. She'd caught her reflection in the hallway mirror and barely recognized the creature staring back, all smoky eyes and crimson lips, playing dress-up in someone else's life. The game room smelled of cigars and testosterone. 5 men occupied the table, each radiating the kind of casual menace that came from never hearing no. Dmitri introduced them. Victor, Mikhail, Roman, Sergei, and someone with an unpronounceable name she immediately forgot. She took her designated chair behind Dmitri, close enough to touch, which was the point. Every man at the table tracked her movement, and she watched their poker faces crack just slightly. Your taste has improved, Volkov, Victor said, lighting a cigar that probably cost more than her former monthly salary. Where'd you find this one? She found me. Dmitri's lie was smooth as the vodka they were drinking. Couldn't resist my charm. The table erupted in laughter that made her skin crawl. Deal, Dmitri said, and the game began. Vera had never been particularly interested in poker, but she was observant. A skill nursing had honed. She watched the tells, Victor's nostril flare when he bluffed, Mikhail's finger drumming when he held good cards, Roman's two casual shrugs before folding. Dmitri played like he did everything else, with calculated precision and absolute confidence. He won 3 hands in a row, stacking chips with those beautiful, brutal hands. "You're killing us," Sergei complained. "Maybe your good luck charm is working too well. Maybe you're just terrible at poker," Dmitri countered, and the edge in his voice reminded everyone exactly who owned this table. By the second hour, the stakes had climbed to absurd heights. Vera watched $50,000 change hands like it was Monopoly money. These men treated wealth the way normal people treated spare change, disposable, infinite, meaningless. "Raise," Victor said, pushing forward a stack that made even Mikhail whistle. 50,000. Dmitri studied his cards with an unreadable expression. Vera had been watching long enough to know he had something good. His breathing had slowed, his shoulders relaxed microscopically.
"Call," he said.
"And raise another 50. The room went silent. Victor's cigar paused halfway to his mouth. "You're bluffing." Only one way to find out. The tension stretched taut enough to snap. Vera found herself leaning forward despite herself, caught in the deadly dance of male egos and money. Victor called. Dmitri laid down a full house, kings over tens. "Fuck," Victor muttered, throwing his cards down. 2 pair, worthless in comparison. "Better luck next time," Dmitri said, and Vera caught the satisfaction in his voice. He'd known from the start he'd win. This whole performance had been about dominance, not gambling. "One more hand," Victor said. "Double or nothing. Everything on the table." Dmitri paused, and Vera felt his attention shift, not to the cards, but to her. Something calculating entered his expression, something that made her stomach drop. "Interesting proposition," he said slowly. "But boring stakes. How about we make it memorable? What did you have in mind?" "I win. I take the pot plus your stake in the warehouse shipment coming through next month." Dmitri's voice had gone soft, dangerous. "You win, you can have an evening with Vera." The room went dead silent. Vera's heart stopped, then restarted at double speed, fury flooding every vein. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice cutting through the stunned quiet. Dmitri didn't look at her. "Those are my terms." "You can't." "I can." Now he did turn, and his eyes were chips of ice. "You seem to have forgotten our arrangement, darling. You're mine to do with as I please. If I want to stake you in a card game, that's my prerogative." The humiliation was physical, a slap across her face. Around the table, men shifted, some uncomfortable, others intrigued by the cruelty on display. "Well, Victor?" Dmitri prompted. "Do we have a deal?" Victor's gaze traveled over Vera like she was already his, and she wanted to claw his eyes out.
"Deal," he said.
"You bastard," Vera whispered. "Careful," Dmitri murmured. "Remember Rule 8? Violations have consequences." She stood abruptly, chair scraping. Every eye tracked her movement. "I need air." "Sit down." "Make me." The challenge hung in the air like smoke. Dmitri's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture, predator recognizing prey that had teeth. "Pavel," he said quietly. The mountain of a man appeared from nowhere, blocking her exit with his considerable bulk.
"Sit," Dmitri repeated.
"Or Pavel will help you sit. Your choice." Vera had never felt more powerless, more trapped. She sat, spine rigid, hatred burning so hot she thought she might spontaneously combust. "Good girl." Dmitri's approval was ash in her mouth. The dealer shuffled. The cards flew across green felt. Vera stopped breathing. Dmitri examined his hand with maddening calm. 5 cards that held her fate. She couldn't read his expression, couldn't tell if she was about to be won like livestock. "Raise," Victor said, pushing his entire stack forward. "All in." Dmitri's fingers drummed once on the table, a tell she'd never seen before. Uncertainty? Surely not. He didn't do uncertainty. "Vera," he said without looking at her. Kiss my neck. What? You heard me. Do it now, or the deal's off and Victor wins by default. She understood then. He wanted the others to think she was his good luck charm, wanted them rattled by the intimacy. Everything was a manipulation with him. Even this. Vera leaned forward, hating herself, hating him, hating every choice that had led here. Her lips touched his throat, felt his pulse jump, and she bit down hard enough to bruise. Dmitri inhaled sharply, but didn't pull away. Again, he commanded. She kissed the spot she'd bitten, slow and deliberate, and whispered against his skin. If you lose me to him, I'll kill you in your sleep. Then I'd better win. He turned his cards over. Royal flush. The room exploded into chaos.
Impossible, Victor sputtered.
You cheated. Careful, Dmitri said softly. That's an accusation that requires proof. Do you have proof, Victor? The threat was unmistakable. Victor deflated, and Vera watched $200,000 change hands, watched her temporary freedom get extended another day. When the game finally ended and the men filed out, she turned on Dmitri with murder in her eyes. How dare you? He grabbed her wrist, yanked her against him with enough force to drive the air from her lungs. How dare I? You're the one who just marked me, like you have any fucking claim. You told me to. I told you to kiss me. You decided to make it memorable. His grip tightened. That wasn't acting, Vera. That was rage, and rage I can work with. Rage means you care. I care about not being won in a card game like a prize pig. I was never going to lose. His certainty was absolute. I stacked the deck. The confession should have surprised her. It didn't. You cheated. I protected what's mine. His free hand cupped her jaw, forcing her to meet his gaze. And make no mistake, you are mine. 6 months, remember? Every breath you take belongs to me until November. I hate you. You keep saying that. His thumb traced her lower lip. But your pulse is racing, and you haven't pulled away. Makes me wonder what else you're lying about. She should have jerked back. Should have slapped him. Should have done anything but stand there while his hand traveled down her throat, counting her racing heartbeat. This isn't over, she managed. No, he agreed. It's barely started. Vera discovered the library by accident on day 7, tucked behind a door she'd assumed was a closet. 3 walls of floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather furniture that begged to be curled up in, and windows overlooking the city's glittering sprawl. It was the first room in the penthouse that felt human. She was halfway through a worn copy of Jane Eyre when Dmitri found her. I wondered where you disappeared to, he said from the doorway. Funny, I thought surveillance was your forte. She didn't look up from the page. Surely you've got this place wired for sound and video. Only the common areas. He entered without invitation because of course he did. Even monsters allow for some privacy. How generous. He poured himself vodka from a crystal decanter, settled into the chair opposite her with the casual grace of a lounging panther. You read? Shocking, I know. The decorative whore has hobbies. I never called you a whore. You didn't have to. She finally met his gaze. It's in every introduction you make. This is Vera, my companion. Everyone knows what that means. It means you're mine. He swirled his glass, and she tracked the movement of his hands, elegant, capable, dangerous. Would you prefer I introduce you as the woman whose brother gambled away $2 million, forcing her into 6 months of indentured servitude? Less subtle, but accurate. The casual cruelty should have stopped hurting by now. It hadn't. What do you want, Dmitri? I want to understand you. He studied her over the rim of his glass. Most women in your situation would have cried by now. Begged. Tried seduction or manipulation. You've done none of those things. Maybe I'm not most women. That's becoming apparent. He set down his glass, leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. Tell me about the book. Why? Because I'm curious. Because we have 6 months to fill, and death, by small talk, sounds tedious. Because, he gestured at the shelves, these were my mother's books and no one's touched them in 15 years. The admission surprised her. Dmitri rarely spoke about anything personal, kept himself wrapped in layers of menace and mystery. Your mother read Jane Eyre? She read everything. Literature was her escape from my father. What was he like? Violent. Ambitious. Everything I am, with less polish. No emotion in his voice, just facts delivered like a weather report. He built this empire with blood and bullets. I inherited it at 17 when someone finally put him down. Did you? Kill him. Dmitri smiled, and it was the coldest thing she'd ever seen. That's rule number 12, Vera. Don't ask questions you don't want answered. She should have been frightened. Instead, she felt something unexpected pity. This man with his expensive suits and colder eyes had been forged in the same fire he now wielded. Broken things breaking other things in an endless cycle. Jane Eyre falls in love with her captor, she said quietly. It's problematic. Most great love stories are. He retrieved his vodka. Rochester locks his wife in the attic. Heathcliff torments everyone around him. Love and cruelty aren't as separate as people pretend. That's a concerning philosophy, says the woman who bit my throat hard enough to bruise. Heat flushed her cheeks. She'd almost forgotten that moment of violence, the satisfaction of marking him. You told me to kiss you. I told you to kiss me. You chose to draw blood. His gaze traveled to where her fingers white-knuckled the book. There's violence in you, Vera. Rage you haven't processed. What are you so angry about? Are you serious? The book slammed closed. You want me to catalog my grievances? Fine. Let's start with the brother who gambled away money he didn't have. Move on to the mobster who gave me 48 hours to produce $2 million. Continue with the 6-month sentence of playing arm candy to a sociopath who thinks owning people is a personality trait. I never claimed to have a personality. He was amused, the bastard. Just money, power, and a complete lack of moral constraints. You're impossible.
I'm consistent.
There's a difference. She wanted to argue, but exhaustion swamped her suddenly, the weight of 7 days pretending, performing, surviving. Why are you really here, Dmitri? I told you. Curiosity. Bullshit. You don't do anything without an agenda. He was quiet for a long moment, and she watched something shift behind his eyes, calculation giving way to something rawer. My birthday is in 3 days, he said finally. I'll be 32. There's a party planned, the usual circus of sycophants and sharks. I want you there. As opposed to all the other parties where I definitely have a choice. This one's different. He stood, crossed to the window, and for the first time, he looked uncomfortable. This one's personal. My father's old associates will attend. Men who knew me when I was still learning to tie my shoes. They'll expect a weakness to exploit. Precisely. He turned, and the vulnerability was gone, replaced by the familiar ice. I need you to be perfect that night. Untouchable. Mine so completely that no one doubts it. And what do I get in return? What do you want? The question caught her off guard. What did she want? Freedom was impossible. Money meant nothing. The only thing that mattered was, I want to call my mother, she said. Really call her. Not some monitored conversation where I recite scripts. I want an hour. Alone.
No surveillance.
Dmitri's jaw tightened. That's asking a lot. You're asking me to sell a fantasy convincing enough to fool men who've known you since childhood. Seems like a fair trade. 1 hour. After the party. If, and only if you perform adequately. Define adequately. You'll know. He moved toward the door, paused with his hand on the frame.
Vera?
The Jane Eyre parallel? It doesn't end well for captors who fall for their prisoners. Rochester goes blind. Loses everything. Good thing you're not capable of love, then. His smile was sharp enough to cut. Good thing. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparations. Irina brought in a team of people who did things Vera didn't know needed doing: manicures, pedicures, facials, something called a brow sculpture that sounded like art class but involved tiny needles. The dress for Dmitri's birthday arrived in a garment bag that probably cost more than the dress itself. When Vera unzipped it, she stopped breathing. It was art. midnight blue silk that caught light like water, cut to skim her body in ways that suggested everything while revealing nothing. A slit-up one thigh, a back that plunged to scandal, sleeves that draped like liquid shadow. He designed it himself, Irina said quietly. Spent weeks on it. Why would he do that? The older woman's expression turned knowing. Maybe you should ask him. But Vera didn't ask because she was terrified of the answer. Easier to believe he was a monster. Easier to hate him when he stayed firmly in the villain role. If he showed humanity, showed care, showed anything resembling genuine feeling. She couldn't afford to wonder. The night of the party, she descended the stairs to find Dmitri waiting in the foyer, and something in her chest tightened painfully. He wore all black suit, shirt, tie, and looked like sin wrapped in expensive fabric. But it was his expression that stopped her. Hunger, yes, but also something deeper.
Pride?
Possession? Whatever it was made her feel like the only woman in the world. Breathtaking, he said quietly. It's just a dress. It's my vision brought to life. He offered his arm, ready to deceive a room full of vipers. Been doing it for 3 weeks. What's one more night? His smile was genuine, reaching his eyes for the first time since she'd met him. There's my girl. The words shouldn't have warmed her. They did anyway. The party was an exercise in controlled chaos. The penthouse had been transformed into something from a magazine spread, all dramatic lighting, ice sculptures, and servers circulating with champagne that cost more per bottle than Vera used to make in a week. Dmitri kept her close, one hand always on her waist, elbow, small of her back, claiming her with casual touches that felt increasingly less like performance and more like need. Dmitri. A silver-haired man approached with a predatory smile. 32. Still haven't managed to get yourself killed.
Disappointed, Viktor Pavlovich.
Perpetually. The man's gaze slid to Vera. And who's this vision? Off limits. Dmitri's hand tightened possessively. Don't even look too hard. Protective. How unlike you. Viktor Pavlovich laughed, and it sounded like gravel. Your father would have shared. My father was a fool. I'm not. The exchange was pleasant on the surface, lethal underneath. Vera recognized the dynamic circling sharks testing for blood in the water. You must be special, Viktor Pavlovich told her, to warrant such devotion from our cold prince. I'm just lucky, Vera said with a smile that showed teeth. Luck. Yes. His eyes glittered with something ugly. Let's hope it holds. When he moved away, Dmitri's tension bled out slightly. That, he murmured against her ear, is the man who tried to stage a coup 3 years ago. Cost me $50 million and 6 months of cleanup. He's still bitter. And you let him in your home? Keep your enemies closer, right? He steered her toward the bar. Besides, if he tries anything tonight, Pavel has permission to get creative. You're all insane. We prefer aggressively pragmatic. He ordered vodka for himself, champagne for her. How are you holding up? You mean besides the existential dread and borrowed dress? The dress isn't borrowed. It's yours. Everything I've given you is yours. For 6 months. For 6 months, he agreed. After that. He trailed off, something complex crossing his features. After that, what? After that, you disappear. New identity if you want it. Enough money to start over anywhere. Your brother's debt erased from all records. It'll be like we never happened. The words should have been a relief. Instead, they felt like loss. Before Vera could examine that uncomfortable realization, a commotion erupted near the entrance. A woman swept in all platinum hair and couture fury, head-to-toe designer everything, and a face that could launch wars. Well, Dmitri muttered. This should be interesting. Who? Katerina. My ex. The woman zeroed in on them like a heat-seeking missile. Up close, she was stunning, the kind of beauty that came from excellent genetics and excellent surgeons. Her gaze traveled over Vera with the warmth of a snake eyeing prey. Dmitri. Katerina's accent was pure Moscow elite. I see you're slumming. Katerina.
His voice had gone flat.
I don't recall inviting you. Viktor Pavlovich brought me as his plus one. She smiled at Vera. You're very pretty, darling. Fresh-faced. Innocent. How long do you think that'll last? Vera's temper, already frayed, snapped. Longer than your relevance, apparently. Dmitri choked on his vodka. Katerina's eyes flashed dangerously. Excuse me? You heard me. You swept in here like you own the place, insulted me within 30 seconds, and expected me to what? Cower? Vera stepped forward, and fuck the height difference, she could project confidence. I might be temporary, but at least I'm present tense. Your ancient history. Dmitri, Katerina purred, ignoring Vera entirely now. Call off your little pet. Why would I do that? He sounded genuinely entertained. This is the most fun I've had at one of these things in years. You can't be serious about her. Whether I'm serious is none of your concern. We ended 2 years ago, Katerina. You married a banker, divorced him 6 months later, and last I heard, you were shopping for husband number 3 in Dubai. I made a mistake. Katerina's mask slipped, showing something desperate underneath. Leaving you was a mistake. We could try again.
No.
The single word was absolute. Final. A door slamming shut. Katerina's composure cracked. Because of her? Some nobody you picked up? Because you bored me. Dmitri's cruelty was casual, surgical. You were acceptable arm candy, adequate in bed, but ultimately forgettable. Vera's been here 3 weeks, and she's already more memorable than our entire year together. The slap echoed through the suddenly silent room. Dmitri's head snapped sideways from the impact, but he didn't react otherwise. Just slowly turned back to face Katerina with an expression that made Vera's blood run cold. Pavel, he said quietly. The mountain appeared from nowhere. Boss. Please escort Ms. Volkov, my apologies. Ms. Fedorova now to the exit. Make sure she understands she's not welcome here again. Or anywhere I own. Or anywhere our associates gather. You can't, Katerina started. I can. I just did. Dmitri touched his reddening cheek absently. You hit me at my own birthday party. That's a social faux pas even I can overlook. Pavel? The big man took Katerina's elbow with surprising gentleness. This way, please. You'll regret this. Katerina's voice climbed as she was escorted out. She'll leave you just like I did. Everyone leaves you, Dmitri. You're unlovable. The door closed on her theatrics. The party stayed frozen for a beat, then conversations resumed with the forced casualness of people pretending they hadn't witnessed something. Well, Dmitri said mildly, signaling a server for more vodka. That was dramatic. Vera stared at him, at the red mark blooming on his cheek, at the complete absence of emotion on his face. Are you okay? It's a slap. Eve survived Veras. That's not what I meant. He looked at her then, really looked, and something shifted in his expression. I know what you meant. And yes.
Ai fine.
What she said was true. He drained his vodka in one swallow. I am unlovable. That's not news, Vera. I made peace with it years ago. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Don't pity me. His voice hardened. I have money, power, and control. Most people die without ever having any of those things. I'm doing just fine. Except you're not. He opened his mouth to argue, but Viktor Pavlovich chose that moment to reappear, looking significantly less smug. My apologies, the older man said. Katerina's behavior was unacceptable. I shouldn't have brought her. No, Dmitri agreed. You shouldn't have. Consider our business dealings under review, Viktor Pavlovich. I don't appreciate my home being used as a stage for your petty manipulations. It wasn't. It was. You knew exactly what you were doing. Dmitri's smile was razor-sharp. Now get the fuck out of my party before I decide to get creative about expressing my displeasure. Viktor Pavlovich left without another word. The party continued, but the mood had shifted. People were careful around Dmitri now, walking on eggshells. Only Vera seemed immune, and she felt the weight of curious stares as the night wore on. By midnight, she was exhausted emotionally, physically, completely drained. When Dmitri finally sent the last guests away, she collapsed onto the nearest sofa with zero grace. "You did well tonight," he said, settling beside her with his tie loosened, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. "I called your ex-girlfriend forgettable and provoked a scene." "Exactly. Well done." She laughed despite herself. "You're insane." "Probably." He was quiet for a moment. "What she said about being unlovable, you don't believe that, do you?" "Does it matter what I believe?" "It shouldn't. But I find myself curious about your opinion." Vera studied him, the sharp angles of his face, the bruise forming on his cheek, the exhaustion around his eyes. "I think you've convinced yourself you're a monster because it's easier than being human. Monsters don't get hurt. They don't feel. They don't need." Insightful. "Am I wrong?"
No.
He stood abruptly, like he couldn't bear the intimacy of the moment. "Your hour. Tomorrow. You can call your mother. Unsupervised." "Thank you." "Don't thank me. You earned it." He paused at the doorway to his suite.
Good night, Vera.
"Dmitri?"
He turned.
"Happy birthday." Something softened in his expression. "Thank you." After he disappeared, Vera sat in the quiet penthouse, surrounded by the detritus of the party, and wondered when exactly the monster had started looking like a man. Vera's mother cried for the first 15 minutes of their call. "I'm okay, Mama," Vera repeated for the 10th time, curled in the library with the door locked, cherishing her promised hour of unsupervised privacy. "Really?
I'm okay.
But 6 months, we won't see you." Her mother's voice cracked. "And that man, the one who called, he sounded dangerous." "He is dangerous. But he's not going to hurt me." That was a lie. Dmitri was already hurting her, just not in ways that left visible bruises. He was breaking down her defenses, making her notice things like the way he read in the evenings, the precise way he took his coffee, the fact that he designed a dress specifically for her body. Making her care. That was the worst hurt of all. "Alexei is sorry," her mother continued.
So sorry.
"He cries every day. Alexei should be sorry. He gambled away $2 million. Vera's anger buried for weeks bubbled up. "He could have gotten himself killed. He could have gotten you killed. Instead, she stopped, swallowing back the confession. "I'm handling it. You sound different. I am different." Vera stared out at the city lights. "I'm learning that the world isn't fair, Mama. That sometimes good people do bad things to survive. That monsters are just people who stopped pretending." "That's not my daughter talking. That's trauma." Maybe it was. Maybe 3 weeks with Dmitri had rewired her brain, taught her to think in transactions and power dynamics. Or maybe she was just finally seeing the world as it really was: sharp, brutal, honest. They talked about safer things: her mother's garden, the neighbor's new baby, the rising price of groceries. Normal life continuing without her. It should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like watching the world through glass, visible but untouchable. When the hour ended, Vera sat in silence for a long time, trying to remember who she'd been before. The nursing student who believed in helping people. The daughter who thought hard work and good intentions were enough. The woman who'd never imagined selling herself to save her brother. That person felt like a stranger now. A knock interrupted her spiral.
Vera.
Dmitri's voice. "May I come in?" She almost said no. Almost. "It's your house." He entered carrying a bottle of wine and 2 glasses, expensive, probably because everything in his world was expensive. How was the call? Necessary. She accepted the wine he poured. "Thank you." "You're welcome." He settled in the opposite chair, and she realized with a start that this was becoming a routine. Evening conversations in the library, both of them shedding their armor for an hour before reality resumed. "Katerina showed up again today," he said after a moment. "At my office. Security removed her. Is she going to be a problem?"
She already is.
"But not the kind you're thinking." He swirled his wine. "She leaked a story to one of the tabloids. About you. About us." Vera's stomach dropped. "What kind of story?" The accurate kind, unfortunately. That you're paying off your brother's debt with personal services. That our arrangement is transactional. That I essentially bought you. Fuck. My sentiment exactly.
He sighed.
The story runs tomorrow. I have lawyers working to suppress it, but in this age of screenshots and social media, everyone's going to know. Horror washed over her. Her mother. Her friends. The hospital where she'd worked. Everyone would know she'd sold herself.
I'm sorry.
And he sounded it genuinely regretful. This is my fault. I should have been more careful. Should have predicted she'd lash out. What happens now? Now, we control the narrative. He set down his wine, leaned forward with that intense focus that made her feel like the only person alive. Tomorrow, we're giving an interview. To someone friendly, someone I trust. We tell them a different story. What story? That we met months ago. That our relationship is real complicated. Yes, but real. That your brother's debt was a separate issue I helped resolve because I care about you. He watched her carefully. We sell them a love story, Vera. With just enough truth to make it believable. No one's going to believe you fell in love. Why not? Because you just said yourself you're unlovable. His expression flickered. Then maybe you should convince them otherwise. You want me to pretend to be in love with you? I want you to pretend we're in love with each other. There's a difference.
Vera laughed sharp, bitter.
That's the most ridiculous thing you've ever suggested. Is it? He stood, crossed her chair, and crouched so they were eye level. This close, she could see flecks of gray in his blue eyes, could count the faint scars on his jawline. Vera couldn't speak. Her entire body was on fire, every nerve ending awake and demanding more. That's what I thought. He stood, and she immediately missed his warmth. The interview is at 10 tomorrow. Wear something romantic. Something that says, I'm absolutely in love with this dangerous man. Dmitri.
Good night, Vera.
He paused at the door. For what it's worth. That wasn't entirely pretend for me either. Then he was gone, leaving her alone with the taste of him on her lips and the terrifying realization that she was in serious trouble. Because somewhere between the poker game and the birthday party, between the library conversations and the calculated touches, she'd started to forget this was temporary. Started to forget he was the villain. Started to imagine what it might be like if the 6 months never ended. The interview was a nightmare. Julia Rosen, society reporter for one of the city's glossier magazines, set up in the penthouse's living room with a photographer and enough equipment to shoot a film. She was sharp-eyed and sharper-witted, the kind of journalist who'd built her reputation on exposing scandals. So, Julia said once they were settled, let's address the elephant in the room. The tabloid story suggests your relationship is transactional. That Vera is essentially collateral for her brother's gambling debt. Dmitri's hand found Vera's, squeezed once. The tabloid story is bullshit. Language, Mr. Volkov.
Fine.
The tabloid story is demonstrably false. His smile was pure charm. Vera and I met 4 months ago at a hospital fundraiser. She was there volunteering, I was there writing a check. I asked her to dinner. She said no. This was news to Vera, but she schooled her expression to neutral. I asked 3 more times, Dmitri continued. She finally agreed. We've been together since. And her brother's debt? A separate issue that I helped resolve because I care about her family. What kind of man would I be if I let the woman I love worry about something I could fix with a phone call? Julia's gaze shifted to Vera.
And you?
What's your side of the story? Vera took a breath, channeled every acting skill she didn't know she had. Dmitri has a reputation. I know what people think of him, but reputation and reality aren't the same thing. She looked at him, and it wasn't hard to inject warmth into her expression, not when she could still taste their kiss.
He's generous.
Thoughtful. Yes, he's dangerous in business, but with me he's different. Different how? Gentle. Patient. He reads to me in the evenings.
He remembers how I take my coffee.
He designed a dress for me. She smiled, and it was almost genuine. Those aren't the actions of a man who views me as property. Julia made notes, clearly skeptical but intrigued. Mr. Volkov, you've never been public about a relationship before. Why now? Because Vera asked me to. A lie, but delivered with absolute conviction. She's proud of what we have. She wanted the world to know. And he lifted Vera's hand, pressed his lips to her knuckles. I would give her anything she asks for. The photographer captured the moment, and Vera knew that image would be everywhere by evening. Dmitri Volkov, the cold prince of crime, looking at her like she hung the moon. Selling the lies so, well, she almost believed it herself. The article ran 3 days later with the headline, "The Prince and His Nurse, Inside Dmitri Volkov's Surprising Romance." Vera read it on her phone while picking at breakfast, equal parts mortified and impressed. Julia had bought it, or at least, she'd been willing to sell it. The piece painted them as unlikely soulmates, complete with quotes about their undeniable chemistry and unexpected tenderness. The photos were worse. Better. Devastating. In one, Dmitri looked at her like she was the only person in the room. In another, she was laughing at something he'd said, her hand on his chest, completely unself-conscious. They looked real. They looked in love. Not bad, Dmitri said, reading over her shoulder. We're almost convincing. Almost. This one. He tapped a photo of them on the balcony, her leaning against the railing, him standing behind her with his arms bracketing her body. Your shoulders are tense. Anyone who looks closely can see you're uncomfortable. Maybe I was cold. It was 70 degrees that day. He straightened, and she felt the loss of his warmth. We need to practice more. Make it second nature. Practice what, exactly? Intimacy. Casual touches. Looking at each other like we can't wait to be alone. He pulled out his phone, typed something. I'm clearing my schedule this weekend. We're going away. Excuse me?
Away.
Somewhere private. Somewhere we can work on making this, he gestured between them, believable enough that even the skeptics buy it. You want me to spend a weekend pretending to be in love with you? I want us to spend a weekend getting comfortable with each other. There's a difference. He pocketed his phone. Pack for warm weather. We leave Friday. What if I say no? Then you violate our agreement, and we discuss penalties. His expression hardened. Don't test me on this, Vera. The article helped, but rumors persist. Viktor Pavlovich is telling anyone who will listen that you're a whore, and I'm a fool. We need to shut that down definitively. By playing house in some remote location? By learning to look at each other without flinching. He leaned down, caught her chin, forced her to meet his gaze. You kissed me back the other night.
Thoroughly.
I'm not imagining the attraction between us. So stop fighting it and let's use it. That's manipulative. Everything about us is manipulative. At least this serves a purpose. He left before she could argue further, and Vera sat alone with the breakfast she couldn't eat and the article that made her want to scream. The worst part? He was right. She had kissed him back, had felt things she shouldn't feel, had started wondering what it would be like if this wasn't pretend. That was dangerous. More dangerous than his reputation or his threats or the 6-month clock ticking down to freedom. Because falling for your captor wasn't love. It was Stockholm Syndrome. And recognizing it didn't make you immune. Friday arrived too quickly. Pavel drove them to a private airstrip where a jet waited, sleek, expensive, obscene. Vera had never been on a private plane before. The interior was all cream leather and polished wood, with a bedroom in the back that she pretended not to notice. Where are we going? She asked once they were airborne. Caribbean. Private island. Dmitri worked on a laptop, reading glasses perched on his nose in a way that shouldn't have been attractive, but absolutely was. No service, no internet. Just beach and sun. Sounds like paradise. Sounds like hell for someone who checks their phone every 5 minutes. I don't check my phone every 5 minutes. He glanced up, one eyebrow raised. You've looked at it 4 times since we boarded. 14 minutes ago. Are you timing me? I notice things. He returned to his laptop. It's part of what I do. Notice patterns. Predict behavior. Identify weaknesses. And what weaknesses have you identified in me? You care too much. About your brother, your mother, even people you barely know. You'd burn yourself to ashes if it meant keeping others warm. He removed his glasses, met her eyes. That kind of compassion is dangerous in my world. It makes you vulnerable. Maybe vulnerability isn't weakness. Spoken like someone who's never had it weaponized against them. There was a story, there's something dark and painful that had taught him to view caring as liability. But before Vera could probe further, turbulence hit, and the plane bucked hard enough to make her gasp. Dmitri was beside her instantly, one hand steadying her, the other gripping the armrest. It's fine. Just air pockets. I know. I'm not afraid of flying. Your pulse suggests otherwise. His thumb pressed against her wrist, counting. Elevated heart rate, rapid breathing. Get out of my personal space. This is practice, remember? Getting comfortable with proximity. But he eased back slightly, giving her room to breathe. Besides, if the plane goes down, we die together. There's something poetic about that. You're deranged. I prefer pragmatically morbid. The turbulence passed. The rest of the flight was smooth, and Vera spent it alternating between staring out the window and trying not to stare at Dmitri, who'd returned to his laptop with single-minded focus. The island was ridiculous. White sand beaches, crystalline water, a villa that belonged in architectural magazines. Staff materialized to take their bags, then disappeared, leaving them alone in paradise. 2 bedrooms, Dmitri said, showing her around. Private bathrooms. Kitchen stocked. If you want something specific, there's a list. This is insane. Vera stood in the main room, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the infinity pool, the sheer excess of it all. People actually live like this? Some people. I bought this place 5 years ago. Used it maybe 3 times.
Why?
Because I could. He shrugged. Money stops meaning anything after a certain point. It's just numbers and accounts, properties you never visit, toys you don't play with. Must be hard, being so wealthy and miserable. It has its challenges.
He was amused again, the bastard.
Come on, let's walk the beach. They walked in silence, shoes discarded on the sand, waves lapping at their feet. Vera hadn't realized how much tension she'd been carrying until it started to ease. Something about the sun and salt air made it harder to maintain her armor. Tell me something true, Dmitri said after a while.
What?
Something true about you. Not the performance, not the survival strategy. Something real. She thought about deflecting, then decided honesty might be its own weapon. I wanted to be a writer. Before nursing, before everything. I wanted to write novels, big, sweeping things about flawed people finding redemption. Why didn't you? Because writing doesn't pay bills. Because my family needed practical, not dreams. Because she stopped, swallowing hard. Because I was afraid I wasn't good enough. That's the most honest thing you've said to me. He picked up a shell, examined it, tossed it back to the waves. For what it's worth, I think you would have been good. You notice things. Details. Motivations. That's what good writers do. How would you know? My mother. She wrote. Never published anything, but she wrote constantly. Notebooks full of stories about people escaping. His expression turned distant. She never did escape. Not really. But the stories gave her somewhere else to be. What happened to her?
Cancer.
8 years ago. No emotion in his voice, but his hands had fisted. By the time they caught it, too late for treatment. She lasted 6 months. I spent every day with her, reading those stories, promising I'd get them published after. Did you?
No.
They were too raw, too revealing. Publishing them would have felt like exposure. He met her eyes. I keep them in a safe in my office. Haven't looked at them in years. The admission hung between them, intimate, vulnerable, completely at odds with the man who'd bought her like property. I'm sorry, Vera said quietly. About your mother. Don't be. She's the only person who ever loved me without agenda. I'm grateful I had her for 38 years. You were 14 when she died. 17 when she died. 14 when my father broke her arm for the first time. He started walking again. But we're not here to excavate my trauma. We're here to practice being a couple. Is that what we're calling this? What would you call it? Coerced method acting? He laughed, genuine, surprised, and it transformed his face. Made him look younger. Almost happy. All right, he said. Let's practice. Put your hand in mine.
Why?
Because couples hold hands. And you currently look like you'd rather touch a snake. Vera took his hand, and it was surprisingly, distressingly comfortable. His palm was warm, his grip firm but not controlling, his thumb tracing absent patterns on her skin.
Better, he said.
Now tell me something you liked about today. The flight was nice. Smooth. Liar. You were terrified during turbulence.
Fine.
I liked. She looked around, trying to find something. I liked that you told me about your mother. That felt real. It was real. He stopped walking, turned to face her. That's the point of this weekend. Finding the real underneath the performance. We don't have to pretend to like each other here. We can just be. And what are we, exactly? His gaze dropped to her mouth. I'm still figuring that out. The first full day on the island. Vera woke to find breakfast laid out on the terrace and Dmitri already swimming laps in the pool, powerful strokes that ate up distance, body cutting through water with practiced efficiency. She watched longer than she should have, noting the play of muscles across his shoulders, the scars scattered across his back. Evidence of a violent life, worn like medals. You're staring, he called without breaking rhythm. Just observing. There's a difference? He pulled himself out of the pool in one fluid motion, water streaming down his body, and she absolutely did not notice the way his swim trunks clung to. Focus, Vera. You're doing it again, he said, amused, wrapping a towel around his waist. Doing what? Looking at me like you're trying to solve a puzzle. He picked up his coffee. Any progress? Only that you're significantly more complex than I initially thought. I'll take that as a compliment. He gestured to the table.
Eat.
Then we're going exploring. Exploring what? The island. There's a reef perfect for snorkeling, hiking trails, a waterfall. You want to play tourist? I want to see you relaxed. Really relaxed, not performing it. He leaned back in his chair, studying her with that unnerving intensity. You're always on guard. Always calculating. I want to know what you're like when you're not in survival mode. Maybe survival mode is all I have left. Then let's find out what's underneath. The snorkeling was magical. Vera had never seen coral reefs before, had never been suspended in that underwater silence where color erupted in every direction. Dmitri stayed close but not suffocating, pointing out fish she didn't know the names for, guiding her away from anything potentially harmful.
It was nice.
More than nice. It was the first time in weeks she'd felt something other than fear or fury or exhaustion. When they surfaced, treading water in the crystal shallows, she found herself smiling, genuine, unforced. There it is, Dmitri said softly. There what is? The real you. Not the nurse, not the martyr, not the woman playing roles to survive. Just Vera, who likes underwater adventures. Don't get used to it. Too late. He swam closer, and this time when he invaded her space, she didn't retreat. You know what I think. I'm sure you're going to tell me. I think you've convinced yourself that caring makes you weak. That wanting things for yourself is selfish. That happiness is something other people get to have. His hand found hers underwater. But you're wrong. Based on what evidence? Based on the fact that you're here. That you sacrificed yourself for your brother, without hesitation. That you've spent 3 weeks hating me but still showed up, still performed, still fought. His grip tightened. That takes strength, Vera. Not weakness. Or stupidity. Sometimes they look the same. He was close enough now that she could count his eyelashes, see the water droplets caught in them. I'm going to kiss you again. That's not practicing for public. I don't give a fuck about public right now. His free hand cupped her jaw. I'm kissing you, because I want to. Because I've been thinking about it for 3 days. Because you look at me sometimes like you want it too. That's. He kissed her before she could finish the protest. This time was different. No performance, no audience, no reason except desire. His mouth moved over hers with deliberate thoroughness, and when his tongue traced her lower lip, she opened for him without thinking. They kissed in the shallows until her lungs burned and her legs wrapped around his waist without conscious decision, until his hands were in her hair and hers were exploring the planes of his chest, until the only thing keeping them vertical was his feet on the sand and his arms around her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dmitri's expression was almost vulnerable. "Tell me you felt nothing," he said. "Tell me this is just physical." "I can't." "Good." He didn't release her, just held her against him in the warm water. "Because I'm tired of pretending this is only an arrangement." "Dmitri, I know. 6 months. Contract. Rules. But fuck the rules, Vera. I want more than performance with you. You don't do more. You said so yourself. I didn't think I could. Then you walked into my office in that terrible dress, looked at me like I was the devil, and bit my throat hard enough to bruise." His laugh was rough. "You made me want things I'd stopped believing in." "What things?" "Connection. Honesty. Someone who sees the monster and doesn't flinch." He set her on her feet, but didn't step back. "I know this is complicated. I know you have every reason to hate me. But I'm asking, can we try being honest? Just for this weekend?" "Honest about what?" "About wanting each other." The admission hung between them, terrifying in its simplicity. Vera should have said no. Should have reminded him about power dynamics and Stockholm Syndrome and the fundamental inequality of their situation. Instead, she heard herself say, "Okay. Okay.
Honest.
This weekend." But Dmitri, she met his eyes. "If this is manipulation, if you're playing some game I can't see." "It's not. I swear it's not." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I'm just a man who's in way over his head with a woman he shouldn't want but can't stop thinking about. That might be the most honest thing you've ever said to me. Then let's keep going." He pulled back, offering his hand. "Come on. There's something I want to show you." The waterfall was hidden deep in the island's interior, accessed by a trail that wound through jungle so dense it felt prehistoric. When they emerged into the clearing, Vera stopped breathing. Water cascaded from 30 feet up into a pool so clear she could see fish darting through it. The whole place felt sacred, untouched, like they'd stepped outside time. "I found this the first time I came here," Dmitri said. "Haven't brought anyone else." "Why not?" "Because some things should stay private. Special." He stripped off his shirt, and she tried not to stare at the artwork of scars across his torso. "Wanna swim?" They swam until the sun started to set, until the water turned golden and warm. Somewhere during those hours, Vera's guard dropped completely. She found herself laughing at his dry humor, sharing stories about her childhood, letting him be close without calculating what he wanted in return. It was the most dangerous thing she'd done yet. As they walked back to the villa in the twilight, hand in hand because it felt natural now, Dmitri said quietly, "Thank you." "For what?" "For giving me this. For letting her guard down. For," he stopped walking, turned to face her, "for making me remember what it feels like to want someone beyond the physical. I'd forgotten that was possible." "Dmitri, I know. We go back in 2 days and reality resumes. But right now, in this moment, can we pretend we're just two people who met under different circumstances?" "What circumstances would those be?" "Maybe you're still a nursing student. Maybe I'm not who I am, just someone who saw you at a coffee shop and thought you were beautiful. Maybe we're on our 3rd date, and I'm trying to figure out how to kiss you goodnight without seeming presumptuous." The fantasy was sweet.
Impossible.
Everything they weren't, and would never be. "And what would I be thinking?" Vera asked. "In this imaginary scenario?" "You'd be thinking he's more charming than expected. That his humor catches you off guard. That maybe, just maybe, you'd like to see him again. And would I?" "I'd hope so." His hand came up, tucked a strand of wet hair behind her ear. "Because in this version, I don't let you go after 3 dates. I keep showing up until you realize I'm serious." "Serious about what?"
About you. About us.
About building something real instead of, he gestured vaguely, encompassing their actual reality. That's a nice fantasy. It could be more than fantasy.
No.
It couldn't. Vera stepped back, breaking the contact. Because in reality, you bought me. You own me for 6 months. And once that's done, I disappear. Remember? New identity, new life, like we never happened. What if I don't want that? What you want doesn't matter. But her voice cracked on the words. This isn't real, Dmitri. It's just proximity and attraction and really good acting. Is it? He closed the distance between them again. Because it feels pretty fucking real to me. That's the problem. She was crying now, hot tears she couldn't stop. It feels real. But feelings aren't the same as reality. In reality, you're a criminal.
I'm collateral.
And 6 months from now, if we've blurred these lines too much, it's going to destroy me. So what do? We enjoy this weekend. We're honest, like you asked. But Monday, when we go back, we remember what this is. And what is it? Temporary. The word tasted like grief. Everything about us is temporary. He looked at her for a long moment, something breaking behind his eyes. Then he nodded once, sharp and final. Okay,
Temporary.
I can do temporary. But the way he said it suggested he was lying to both of them. Their last night on the island, Dmitri cooked dinner, actually cooked, not ordering staff to prepare something. He moved around the kitchen with surprising competence, chopping vegetables, seasoning fish, explaining that his mother had insisted he learn. She said a man who can't feed himself is a child, he said, sliding the fish into the oven. That self-sufficiency was the only real power. Smart woman. The smartest. He poured wine red this time, rich and complex. She would have liked you. Based on what? You're stubborn. Sharp. You don't take shit from anyone, including me. He raised his glass. To temporary things that feel permanent. That's depressing. Welcome to my worldview. They ate on the terrace under stars, so bright they seemed artificial. The fish was perfect, the wine better, and the conversation flowed with an ease that felt dangerous in its normalcy. Tell me something else true, Vera said, emboldened by alcohol and moonlight. What do you want to know? Why you really do this? The whole crime lord thing. You clearly don't need more money. Dmitri was quiet for a long moment, considering. Control, he said finally. When my father was alive, everything was chaos. Violence for the sake of violence, loyalty bought through fear. After he died, I had a choice, abandon the empire or remake it. And you chose to remake it. I chose to prove I could do it better.
Smarter.
With strategy instead of just brutality. He stared out at the dark ocean. My father built an empire on broken bones. I maintain one on information and leverage. Still morally reprehensible, but at least it's efficient. You say that like it's better. Isn't it? Fewer bodies, less collateral damage. I prefer ruining people financially over killing them. They can rebuild from financial ruin. Death is rather permanent. Unless they can't rebuild. Unless your financial ruin drives them to suicide or destroys their families or... Then they shouldn't have made deals they couldn't honor. His voice hardened. I don't prey on innocence, Vera. Everyone who owes me money knew the stakes, including your brother. The reminder was a splash of cold water. He's 23.
Stupid.
He didn't understand. He understood perfectly. He just thought he was special. That rules wouldn't apply to him. That someone else would clean up his mess. Dmitri's gaze cut to her. He was right about that last part. So this is my fault. I didn't say that. You implied it. I stated facts. He refilled her wine. But for what it's worth, I'm glad he fucked up. Otherwise, I wouldn't have met you. That's twisted. Everything about us is twisted. He stood, offered his hand. Dance with me. There's no music. Then we'll make our own rhythm. It should have been corny. Instead, it was intimate, swaying together in the moonlight, her head against his chest, his heartbeat steady in her ear. No performance, no calculation, just two damaged people pretending they could be whole together. I'm going to miss this, Vera whispered. This version of you. The one who cooks and swims and tells me about his mother. The one who's almost human. Yes. That version only exists with you. His arms tightened around her. Everyone else gets the monster. But you get the man underneath. Why me? Because you saw him first. That night you bit my throat? That was the first time in years someone had surprised me. Really surprised me. I've been fascinated ever since. Fascination isn't love.
No.
But it's a start. She pulled back to look at him. Dmitri. I know. Temporary. I heard you. But his expression said otherwise. Said he was already planning how to make permanent what she'd declared impossible. We should go inside, she said, even though she didn't want to move.
Why?
Because standing here like this, I might do something stupid. Like forget all the reasons we're wrong for each other. Then forget. He cupped her face in his hands. Just for tonight. Tomorrow we'll remember. But tonight, let's be stupid together. It was the worst idea. The most reckless choice. Everything she'd sworn not to do. She kissed him anyway. This time, there was no hesitation, no careful exploration. This was urgency and need, hands tangling in hair, bodies pressed together, months of tension finally finding release. They barely made it inside. The bedroom was moonlit and warm, all white linens and open windows. Dmitri was gentle surprisingly, devastatingly gentle, taking his time with buttons and zippers, mapping her skin like he wanted to memorize every inch. We don't have to, he started. We do. I do. I want. She pulled him closer. I want this. Tonight. Something that's mine. Not negotiated or contracted or forced. You're sure? Stop asking and just. He kissed her quiet, and then there were no more words, just sensation and heat and the discovery that physical chemistry they'd been fighting translated into something incendiary when given permission. Afterward, wrapped in sheets with his heartbeat slowing against her spine, Vera let herself pretend. Just for a few hours, she pretended this was real, that they were a normal couple on a tropical vacation, that love was possible between a monster and his captive. The fantasy lasted until dawn, when reality crept back in with the sunrise. We should talk, Dmitri said, propping himself on one elbow. About what this changes. It doesn't change anything. She sat up, pulling the sheet around herself. We agreed. Temporary. This was just. Don't. His voice went hard. Don't reduce it to just anything. Last night mattered. To who?
To you?
Because you've decided you want to extend our arrangement past 6 months. Would that be so terrible? Yes. She stood, searching for her clothes. Yes, it would be terrible because it isn't real. It's Stockholm Syndrome and manipulation and really good sex, but it's not love. It can't be love. Why not? Because you bought me. The words exploded out. You literally purchased me like property. That's not a foundation for anything healthy. That's trauma bonding at best, abuse at worst. So, what was last night? A mistake. She pulled on her dress from yesterday with shaking hands. A beautiful, stupid mistake that we're not repeating.
Vera.
Don't. She couldn't look at him. Please don't. Let's just go back to what works. And what's that? You being the monster. Me being the captive. Both of us pretending last night never happened. I can't do that. You have to. Finally, she met his gaze. Because I can't survive caring about you. I can't survive hoping for something that ends in 3 months. So please let me hate you again. It's safer. Something broken flickered across his face. Then his mask slammed back into place, and the man who'd cooked her dinner and danced with her under stars disappeared, replaced by the ice prince who owned half the city. As you wish, he said coldly. Consider last night forgotten. But the way he looked at her suggested it was anything but forgotten. and the way her heart cracked suggested she'd just made a terrible mistake. The charity auction was a glittering circus of wealth and ego. Vera wore another designer dress, emerald silk, that made her skin glow and her eyes shine, and played her part perfectly. Smiled at the right people, laughed at unfunny jokes, stood at Dmitri's side like she belonged there. He treated her with polite distance. No lingering touches, no heated glances, nothing to suggest they'd ever been more than contractual partners. It was exactly what she'd asked for. She hated it. "You're doing well," he murmured during a break in the proceedings. "Very convincing. Thank you. How much longer are we going to do this?" "Do what?" "Pretend we don't want to talk about the island. Forever." She accepted champagne from a passing server. "Or at least 3 more months."
Vera.
"Mr. Volkov." Viktor Pavlovich approached with his predatory smile. "Lovely event. And your companion is radiant as always."
Viktor Pavlovich.
Dmitri's voice held warning. "Enjoying yourself?" "Immensely. In fact, I was hoping to speak with you. Business matter. Perhaps somewhere private." Dmitri's hand tightened microscopically on his glass. "Now isn't the time. I insist." Viktor Pavlova's smile sharpened. "It concerns our mutual friend, the one who's been rather talkative lately." A muscle jumped in Dmitri's jaw. "Vera, would you excuse us?" "Of course." She moved toward the bar, grateful for the reprieve, and tried not to watch them disappear into a side room. She was nursing her second champagne when someone else approached, a woman in her 60s, elegant and sharp-eyed. "You're Dmitri's girl," the woman said without preamble. "I'm his companion. Same thing in his world." The woman extended a hand. "Irina Volkov, Dmitri's aunt, his father's sister." Vera shook her hand, suddenly wary. "It's nice to meet you." "Is it?" Irina's gaze was assessing. "Tell me something, dear. Are you with my nephew by choice?" The directness was startling. "That's complicated. Most worthwhile things are." Irina sipped her wine. "I knew his mother, you know. Natasha. Beautiful woman. Too good for my brother, but love makes fools of us all." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you remind me of her. That same fierce determination. That same way of looking at Dmitri, like you're trying to see past his armor." Irina's expression softened. She loved him desperately, you know. Even when loving him hurt. Even when he pushed her away. I don't love him." Irina smiled. "Keep telling yourself that, dear. But I've been watching you tonight. The way you track his movement across the room. The way you flinch every time someone touches him. The way your shoulders relax the moment he left with Viktor Pavlovich, because at least now you know where he is. That's not love. That's just caring. Yes, that's how it starts." Irina set down her glass. "My nephew is a difficult man. Dangerous, broken, convinced he's unlovable. But he's not. He's just been hurt so thoroughly that he's forgotten how to be soft." "What happened to him?" "His father happened to him. Years of violence, both witnessed and experienced. But that's his story to tell, not mine." Irina touched Vera's arm gently. "I just wanted you to know whatever brought you two together, whatever keeps you there, it doesn't have to be permanent. But the question is, do you want it to be?" Before Vera could answer, commotion erupted from the direction Dmitri and Viktor Pavlovich had gone. Raised voices. A crash. Then silence that felt ominous. Vera moved without thinking, pushing through the crowd, ignoring social protocols and curious stares. She found them in a study. Viktor Pavlovich on the floor holding his jaw, Dmitri standing over him with bloodied knuckles and murder in his eyes. "Say it again," Dmitri said softly. Too softly. "Say one more word about her and see what happens." "Dmitri," Vera said from the doorway. He spun, and something in his expression cracked when he saw her.
Vera.
What happened?" Dmitri's fists clenched. He made comments. Suggestions about you. About what you must be willing to do to. "It's fine." "It's not fine." The rage in his voice made her flinch. "Nobody talks about you like that." Nobody implies that you're property. She stepped into the room, closed the door behind her. Because that's what I am, Dmitri. That's what this arrangement made me. So, why does it matter what some asshole says? It matters because you're not property. He crossed to her, cupped her face with shaking hands. You were never property. Not to me. Not from the beginning. Then what am I? Everything. The word came out broken. You're everything, and I'm terrified of losing you, and I just punched a man twice my age because he dared to reduce you to something transactional. Behind them, Viktor Pavlovich struggled to his feet. You'll regret this, Volkov. Get out, Dmitri said without looking away from Vera. Get out of this room, this building, this city. If I see you again, I won't stop at one punch. Viktor Pavlovich left, muttering threats. And then they were alone. Your hand, Vera said, taking his injured one carefully. You need ice. I need you to tell me I didn't just ruin everything.
His voice was raw.
I need you to tell me there's a way forward where I don't lose you in 3 months. Dmitri, I love you. The confession burst out like he'd been holding it too long. I know it's insane. I know you have every reason to not believe me. But I love you, Vera. Not as property, not as collateral. As the woman who challenges me, who sees past my reputation, who bites my throat and calls me on my bullshit and makes me want to be better than I am. Tears blurred her vision. You can't love me. Too late. I already do. His forehead pressed to hers. And I know you said you can't afford to care. But if there's even a chance you feel something too, tell me. Give me hope. Hope for what? For after. For when the 6 months end and you're free to choose. For you choosing to stay. And if I stay, then what? I become your girlfriend? Your partner? We pretend we met some normal way instead of through blackmail and debt. We acknowledge how we met and build something better from it. His hands shook against her face. I can't promise perfect. I can't promise easy. But I can promise that I will spend every day proving you made the right choice. That's assuming I choose you. That's me begging you to. Vera looked at him, this dangerous, damaged man who'd somehow become her entire world. Who'd started as her captor and ended as her, what?
Law?
Friend? Something more complicated than either? I'm not saying yes, she said carefully. Not yet. Because I need to know this is real, not just Stockholm Syndrome or really good chemistry. I need the rest of these 3 months to figure out if I can actually love you outside of this arrangement. But you're not saying no. I'm saying maybe. Conditional on you proving this isn't just obsession.
Deal.
Relief flooded his expression. Whatever terms you want. However long it takes. And we're clear at the end of 6 months. I'm free. No extensions unless I explicitly agree. No manipulation, no guilt trips, no using my family as leverage. Crystal clear. Okay then. She took his injured hand, examined his split knuckles. Let's get you cleaned up. Then we're going home, and you're going to tell me everything. Your father, your mother, every scar and secret. Because if I'm going to consider this, I need to know who you really are. That's terrifying. Good. Welcome to my world. They left the auction early, ignoring scandalized whispers about Viktor Pavlovich's exit and Dmitri's bloodied knuckles. Pavel drove them home in silence, and for the first time, the penthouse felt less like a prison and more like possibility. In the library, their library now, they sat across from each other with coffee and vodka, and Dmitri began to talk. He told her about his father's violence, the things he'd witnessed as a child, the impossible choice of taking over an empire built on blood. He told her about his mother's death, the notebooks full of stories he still couldn't bear to read, the isolation of being powerful and alone. And Vera listened, really listened, understanding finally that monsters weren't born, they were made. And sometimes, with enough patience and stubbornness and refusal to give up, they could be unmade too. Your turn, Dmitri said as dawn approached. Tell me what you're afraid of. Believing in this and being wrong, she admitted. Building a life with you and discovering it's all been performance. letting myself love you and having it destroy me when it ends. And if it doesn't end, then I guess we figure out how to be real together. Messy and complicated, and nothing like either of us planned. I can live with that. He stood, offered his hand. Come to bed. Just to sleep. No expectations, no obligations. Just two people who've talked all night and need rest. She took his hand, let him lead her to his room. Really his room now, not the guest suite she'd been relegated to. They lay facing each other in the dark, and his hand found hers under the covers. 3 more months, he said quietly. 3 more months, she agreed. Then we see. And if you choose to leave, then I leave. And you let me go. That's the deal. I'll let you go, he promised. But I won't stop loving you. That's very dramatic. I'm Russian. Drama's in our DNA. His thumb traced circles on her palm.
Zlit, Vera.
Tomorrow, we can start figuring out what comes next. She closed her eyes, secure in his presence, and thought, maybe monsters could learn to love after all. Maybe captivity could become choice. Maybe broken things could heal if they just tried hard enough. 3 months to find out. 3 months to decide if the devil deserved redemption. 3 months to discover if love could survive in the space between darkness and dawn. She fell asleep with his heartbeat as her anchor and the first real hope she'd felt in 6 weeks warming her chest. Tomorrow would bring its own complications. But tonight they had something close to peace. And for now, that was enough.
The end.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe for more intriguing contents.